Hello there, and welcome back to the Sleep Science. Tonight, the air is heavy with stillness, and the walls seem to lean in, waiting. You shift on your pillow, ears pricked, hearing almost nothing. But the silence isn't empty, not really. If you listen closely, closer still, you'll notice it. A low hum from the refrigerator in the kitchen, the ticking heartbeat of an old clock somewhere behind the drywall, maybe even the gentle swish of blood through your own ears. These are the unnoticed vibrations of your daily life, and whether you realize it or not, you're soaking in sound every second you're awake, or asleep, or pretending to be both. Sound is movement, but not just any movement. It's a kind of invisible dance, an agitated shimmy of particles bumping into one another like 1,000 dominoes falling in synchronized waves. A tree falls in a forest, a drumstick strikes a snare, your neighbor drops something at 3 a.m. The first step is always the same. Something has to move. And not just any movement, it must vibrate, push, pull, pulse. You don't get sound without that first shiver. You're not hearing the thing itself. You're hearing what the thing does to the space around it. That's the real twist. A bell rings, sure, but what you hear is the way that bell jostles the air. Vibrations ripple out in all directions, stretching like an expanding soap bubble. And if those ripples reach your ears, congratulations, you've got yourself a sound wave. Now picture this. You're lying on your back in a cave 10,000 years ago, staring up at a soot-scarred ceiling. A mammoth bone drum thumps nearby, sending rhythmic shocks through the ground and into your bones. The ancient musicians didn't understand sine waves or compression zones, but they knew this much. If you hit something just right, the air jumps. Historians still argue whether early humans understood sound as magic or merely as a tool. But either way, they chased it, through chants, footsteps, heartbeats, and thunderclaps. And the physics, that part hasn't changed. All sound still begins with energy transferred into a medium, usually air, sometimes water, occasionally something solid enough to make your teeth rattle. What makes sound so uniquely strange is how personal it is. Vibrations happen all around us, but they don't become sound until they touch you. Specifically, until they bump your eardrum like a microscopic trampoline. Until then, it's just motion, unheard, unfelt, a phantom waiting to be noticed. And that's where the mischief starts. Your ears aren't just passive receivers, they're highly tuned translators. Tiny, fleshy microphones with attitudes. They have preferences, frequencies they like, ones they ignore. You could be standing next to someone, both of you in the same vibration soup, and still hear things differently. Maybe it's why couples argue about whether the fan is loud or soothing. You may be surprised to learn that the first scientific attempts to define sound go back to Pythagoras, triangle guy. Around 500 BCE, he started poking at musical strings and realized that different lengths produced different pitches. This was revolutionary. Sound wasn't just divine chaos, it followed rules. Kind of like cats, but with fewer scratches. Now fast forward to Galileo in the 17th century, muttering into notebooks about pendulums and bells. He observed that the pitch of a tone is related to how fast an object vibrates. The faster it jiggles, the higher the note. That's frequency in action, and it's why a violin sings while a bass growls. Quirky side note. In 1806, an inventor named Charles Wheatstone built a contraption called the enchanted lyre. It used hidden rods and strings to create ghostly music that seemed to play itself, an 1800s party trick that probably ruined more than a few polite dinners. People believed it was spirits. Spoiler alert, it was just sneaky engineering and a lot of vibration science. But even today, we still wrestle with sound's basic question. Is it the thing or the experience of the thing? Philosophers and physicists love to argue over whether sound exists independently or only in your perception. If a tree falls in the forest and your AirPods are in transparency mode, well, you know how that goes. Let's not forget the weird edge cases either. Some scientists propose that sound might have helped early humans see better in the dark, triggering the brain to boost visual awareness during auditory stimuli. That's speculative, but fascinating, and makes your paranoia about night creaks feel slightly more justified. Then there's the cultural legacy. Every civilization has stories wrapped in sound. Think about Tibetan singing bowls, Aboriginal didgeridoos, Gregorian chants, and the sweet hiss of old vinyl. Sound holds memory. It's probably the only reason you remember all the lyrics to a cereal commercial from 1997, but forgot what you ate for lunch today. And as you lay there tonight, cozy in your blanket cave, your body continues to listen. Your skin senses vibration. Your bones conduct resonance. You are, biologically speaking, a resonant chamber wrapped in flannel. And tomorrow morning, when the garbage truck screeches past your window at the exact wrong time, just remember, it all started with a vibration. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world this sleepy little science club is tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You press your ear against the fabric of the world, and every sound you'll ever hear begins with something small. A tap, a tremor, a twitch of energy transferred into space. And even now, you're surrounded by it, whether you notice or not. You roll onto your side, pillow folding gently against your ear, and for a moment the room shifts. That faint hum from the hallway, gone. The ticking clock, muted. Instead, what reaches you now is softer, muffled echoes of distant traffic, the sound of your own breath pushing rhythmically through your nostrils. Without even realizing it, you've tuned the dial of your perception. Not by changing what's happening in the world, but by altering how the waves travel to you. Because here's the next piece of the puzzle. Sound isn't just about vibration. It's about how those ripples move through whatever happens to be in the way. A sound wave doesn't float through nothing. It needs a medium, something to push and pull, to compress and stretch. That medium is usually air, but it can be water, steel, gelatin, even the wooden frame of your bed. Picture a pebble plopped into a lake. The ripples spread outward, smooth and circular. That's what sound does when it's unbothered. But unlike water, which is fairly chill about letting waves pass, the molecules in air are squirrely. They bounce, they collide, they absorb. Which is why sound doesn't always move cleanly. It distorts, it loses energy, and sometimes it gets completely swallowed up by a thick sweater or a well-insulated attic. The speed of sound changes depending on the material it's traveling through. In dry air at room temperature, it zips along at roughly 343 meters per second. Not bad, but in water, over 1,400 meters per second. And in steel, a blinding 5,960 meters per second. That's right, sound travels faster through metal than through air. Which means if you press your ear against a railway track like a vintage cartoon villain, you'll hear the train long before it comes rumbling into view. Do not try this at home, or anywhere actually. Historians still debate how well ancient cultures understood the transmission of sound through different materials. Some say the architects of the Mayan temples knew exactly how sound would bounce across their ceremonial plazas, crafting them into perfect echo chambers. Others argue it was just accidental genius, lucky resonance caught in stone. Either way, the result is the same. Shout once, and the stone walls reply 7 times. That's not myth. That's physics. You've experienced this too, even if you didn't notice. Think about shouting across a canyon, talking underwater in a pool, or trying to hear someone whisper from the other side of a thick door. The same voice, the same lungs, but the sound arrives differently, shaped by the path it's forced to take. Here's a quirky one. During World War II, military engineers discovered that sound traveled far better over frozen ground than through the air. Soldiers could hear tanks approaching miles away, not because the engines were louder, but because the frozen earth carried those vibrations efficiently, straight into the soles of their boots. Nature's own early warning system, courtesy of some very disciplined molecules. Your body, as it turns out, is not exempt from being a sound medium. In fact, your own skull can betray you. Try this sometime. Hum a low note while plugging your ears. You'll still hear it, sort of, because the vibration travels through your bones directly to your inner ear. It's called bone conduction, and it's why your voice sounds completely different in recordings. You're used to hearing yourself from the inside out, not the outside in. This same principle is how Beethoven, completely deaf later in life, was still able to compose. He clamped a rod between his piano and his teeth, using his jawbone to feel the vibrations of the notes. That wasn't just poetic resilience. That was science. Cheekbone acoustics at their finest. And then there's the curious case of helium. You've probably done the party trick, inhale, squeak out a chipmunk phrase, and watch your friends collapse with laughter. But what's really happening? Helium is less dense than air, so sound travels faster through it. That increase in speed boosts the resonance of higher frequencies in your vocal tract. You don't change your pitch exactly. Your voice just resonates differently. But cartoonified. On the flip side, breathing in a denser gas like sulfur hexafluoride. And no, do not try this one, will slow down the sound and make your voice drop into a creepy baritone. Same chords, new medium, wildly different result. You're a walking physics experiment with teeth. But even everyday life is full of these subtle shifts. Ever notice how music sounds richer in the shower? That's because hard surfaces like tile reflect sound instead of absorbing it. The waves bounce around, overlapping, amplifying each other. That quick acoustic boost gives your off-key singing the illusion of depth. Just ask any shampoo bottle you've ever serenaded. Different rooms carry different voices, and architects know it. That's why theaters use curved ceilings and carefully placed panels to manage sound reflections. But we'll save that little rabbit hole for later. For now, just know this. Sound doesn't simply happen. It's a traveler, shaped by every inch of space it moves through. Every wall, every cushion, every raindrop on your window pane affects how sound is born, moves, and dies. And speaking of death, well, the death of sound anyway, remember that a wave eventually fades. It loses energy as it passes through materials, especially soft ones. That's why libraries have carpeted floors and soundproofing panels, to hush the waves before they go too far. It's not magic, it's entropy. Even the air itself gets in the way. Moisture, temperature, and pressure all change how far and how fast sound can move. On a hot, humid night, your neighbor's barking dog seems closer. That's not your imagination. That's science being annoying again. So tonight, as you lie there in that little sound chamber you call a bedroom, you're not just wrapped in blankets. You're wrapped in invisible, pulsing waves, some strong, some fatting, some bouncing quietly off the walls before dissolving into stillness. A universe of motion, coursing through everything it touches, shaping what you hear and what you miss. It's all around you, whether you want it or not. And knowing that makes the silence feel a little louder, doesn't it? You're lying there, maybe one arm tucked under your pillow, when a tiny pop echoes faintly in your ear. A joint shifting, a floorboard groaning. But what you really notice is how precisely your body reacts. You don't just hear it, you feel it, faint and sudden. That's the quiet superpower of your ears, those odd, curled structures sitting so casually on the sides of your head. They may look decorative, like nature's attempt at origami, but inside, they're a full-blown laboratory of biological engineering. And tonight, you're stepping inside the human ear. Sound reaches your outer ear first, the pinna, that ridged scoop of cartilage that helps funnel vibrations inward. It's shaped just so to catch the direction of sound, letting you instinctively know if that creak came from above, behind, or uncomfortably close to your nightstand. Animals with mobile ears, think cats, bats, or nervous deer, have this directional feature turned up to 11. You've got fixed antennae, but they still get the job done. From the outer ear, vibrations travel through the ear canal, your auditory hallway, until they collide with the eardrum, a thin membrane stretched tighter than a trampoline at a toddler's birthday party. When sound hits the eardrum, it vibrates, rapidly, delicately, and this is where things get impressively weird. Behind the eardrum sits the middle ear, home to the three smallest bones in your entire body, the malleus, incus, and stapes, better known by their friendly nicknames, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Each is roughly the size of a grain of rice. Together, they form a tiny mechanical chain that transmits and amplifies the vibrations, passing them like a secret from one bone to the next. The stapes is the last stop, and it taps, gently, rhythmically, on the oval window, a gateway into the inner ear. Historians still argue whether early anatomists fully grasped what these bones were doing. The ancient Greeks documented the ear's shape, but it wasn't until the Renaissance that scientists like Andreas Vesalius and Eustachius, yes, like the tube, began mapping the bones in detail. Even then, the full mechanism remained mysterious until microscopes caught up with the anatomy. But the pieces were always there, tucked inside your skull like hidden gears in a grandfather clock. Now we enter the cochlea. This is your inner ear's main event, a coiled spiral like a snail shell no bigger than a chickpea, lined with thousands of tiny hair cells. These aren't hairs like the ones on your head. They're more like microscopic reeds, each tuned to a different frequency. When the fluid inside the cochlea starts to ripple from the vibrations, these hair cells bend and sway like kelp in a current. That movement gets translated into electrical signals and zapped straight to your brain via the auditory nerve. What's wild is how organized this process is. Different parts of the cochlea respond to different frequencies. High notes near the base, low notes near the tip. It's a frequency map, your own biological equalizer. If one part gets damaged, you might stop hearing certain pitches altogether. That's why people with hearing loss sometimes describe speech as muffled or music as strangely incomplete. Let's take a detour into fringe territory, just for fun. Some researchers in the 19th century believed the ear was a psychic organ, capable of picking up vibrations beyond physical sound, messages from spirits perhaps. They built elaborate horns and sound chambers, trying to catch whispers from the beyond. Spoiler, they mostly caught static and embarrassment, but the idea stuck around, eventually inspiring both early radio design and some delightfully spooky science gadgets. Meanwhile, the auditory nerve, carrying all this finely tuned data, doesn't just relay sound. It also delivers information to your brain's temporal lobe, where perception and recognition happen. That's the kicker. Until your brain decodes the signal, it's not a voice, or a laugh, or your neighbor's cursed saxophone practice. It's just patternless electricity. Noise becomes meaning only after interpretation. Which is why two people can hear the same sound and experience it entirely differently. You might hear a creaking stair and assume it's the house settling. Someone else might hear it and picture a vengeful Victorian ghost. Same input, wildly different processing. Your brain brings its own baggage. Here's a neat twist. Your ears are always on. Even when you sleep, they keep listening. Your brain just decides whether to wake up based on what it hears. That's why you might sleep through thunder but bolt upright at the sound of your own name whispered down the hall. The auditory system has priority access to your attention, like a backstage pass to consciousness. And of course, this whole system can break down in strange ways. There's a condition called musical ear syndrome, where people with hearing loss begin to hallucinate music. Not just vague melodies, full songs, orchestras, even choral pieces. Historians note that Charles Darwin may have experienced this in his later years, reporting phantom organ music in the quiet countryside. Scientists still debate whether it's a glitch or the brain trying to fill in expected patterns in the absence of real sound. On the other hand, damage to the inner ear can lead to tinnitus, a persistent ringing or buzzing with no external source. Some say it's maddening, others barely notice it. But here's the strange part. The sound isn't in your ears at all. It's generated by the brain in response to lost input, like a radio filling static into dead air. You go deaf in one register and your brain starts improvising. Not helpful, but certainly enthusiastic. Even stranger, your ears play a major role in balance. Inside the inner ear are tiny structures called the semicircular canals, filled with fluid and little crystals that detect movement and orientation. Spin too fast and they slosh around, confusing your brain. That's dizziness. Damage them and your sense of up and down gets scrambled. Fun fact, NASA spends a lot of time worrying about this when sending astronauts into zero gravity. So next time you cover your ears to block out the world, remember what you're silencing. A wildly complex, constantly humming data center that keeps you connected to the world. It's not just about hearing, it's about spatial awareness, emotional response, even memory. You don't just listen with your ears, you exist through them. And while your ear may look like a modest fold of flesh, it hides the oldest instruments known to science, strung not with strings or keys, but with fluid and bone and nerves. A living microphone that keeps playing long after you've stopped paying attention. Somewhere in the dark, a mosquito whines, high, sharp, relentless. You swat at the air on instinct, already too late. But it's not pain that bothers you yet, it's pitch. That specific, thin, almost whining frequency that slices through your sleep like a needle through fabric. It doesn't even have to be loud, just high enough. And now you're awake. Welcome to the fascinating world of pitch and frequency, where every squeak, boom, and whistle comes down to how fast something is vibrating. Pitch, in its simplest form, is your perception of frequency, the speed at which sound waves vibrate. The faster the wave, the higher the sound. Think of it like flipping pages in a book. If you flip slowly, it makes a low, fluttering noise. But the faster you go, the higher and more frantic the sound becomes. That's frequency. And your ears, they're pretty picky about it. Humans typically hear sounds in the range of 20 to 20,000 hertz. That's 20 to 20,000 vibrations per second. Below that range, you're dealing with infrasound will get there. And above it, ultrasound will get there too. But within that spectrum is the soundtrack of your life. The clink of dishes at 1000 Hz, a baby's cry at 3000 Hz, a police siren peaking around 4000. And that mosquito, likely clocking in at a smug 17,000 Hz, just under the wire for what your ears can detect, until they can't. Because here's the kicker. Your ability to hear high frequencies declines with age. It's called presbycusis, and it's as inevitable as taxes and mystery bruises. Teenagers can hear a sound called the mosquito tone, a high-pitched beep around 17.4 kHz, while many adults can't detect it at all. Some clever shops have even used this as a loitering deterrent, playing it outside stores to nudge away younger crowds without bothering older customers. No signs, no confrontations, just weaponized pitch. Historians still debate whether ancient cultures fully grasped the link between pitch and vibration speed. Pythagoras observed it in plucked strings and created musical ratios, But it wasn't until centuries later that hertz gave us actual numbers. Today, every musical note you hear corresponds to a specific frequency. The A above middle C, that's 440 Hz. Known as concert pitch, it's the international tuning standard, though some orchestras argue it should be slightly higher, at 442 or 444 Hz for a brighter sound. Tiny changes, big drama. Musicians are sensitive creatures. Now, if you've ever been near a jet engine or stood too close to a loudspeaker, you know that loud doesn't always mean high. Volume and pitch are different beasts. You can have a quiet whistle or a loud drum, but our brains do funny things. A very high pitch often feels louder even when it is. That's partly because our ears are more sensitive in certain ranges, especially around 2000 to 5000 Hz, the same range as human speech. It's like nature built your ears specifically for eavesdropping. And maybe she did. There's also a phenomenon called the missing fundamental. Imagine you hear a complex tone, multiple frequencies layered together, but your brain fills in the lowest one even if it isn't actually there. It's like your ears do a little detective work and say, "Ah yes, this sound implies a 100 Hz bass tone," even if that tone's physically missing. Audiophiles love to argue about whether this makes cheap headphones sound better or worse. Spoiler, worse. But your brain wants to help. Bless its enthusiastic little synapses. Quirky side note, cats can hear up to 64,000 Hz. That's more than triple your range. Bats go even higher. And dogs, they max out around 45,000 Hz. That's why a dog whistle works. It's high-pitched enough for your pup to notice, but blissfully silent to your ears, unless you're under 25 and cursed with excellent hearing, in which case, congrats and sorry. There's also a weird social angle to pitch. Studies suggest people tend to trust deeper voices more, particularly in leaders or politicians. The assumption is that lower pitch implies calmness, authority, and confidence. Meanwhile, high-pitched voices are sometimes associated with urgency or distress. It's evolutionary baggage, likely tied to the way infants wail when they need attention. And sure enough, baby cries fall right in the middle of that 3,0005,000 Hz sweet spot. Built-in alarm clocks, tuned for maximum disruption. But here's something truly strange. You can actually see pitch in a way. There's an old device called a Chladni plate, just a flat metal sheet sprinkled with sand. When vibrated at different frequencies, the sand jumps into beautiful geometric patterns. Higher pitches produce more complex shapes. It's sound made visible, like the music of the cosmos drawn in salt. Some even claim these patterns resemble ancient mandalas or crop circles. Historians still argue whether ancient instruments were designed with visual harmonics in mind, or whether that's just modern mysticism peeking through the curtain. Now back to your ears. Your sensitivity to pitch isn't fixed. Musicians, especially violinists and singers, can train their brains to detect microtonal differences, variations as small as a few cents, a cent being 1/100th of a semitone. That's like hearing the difference between two notes played 1/10 of a key apart on a piano. Most of us don't notice. Musicians wince. And it turns out your perception of pitch can also change with context. This is called the shepherd tone illusion. It's a combination of layered tones that sound like they're rising in pitch endlessly, forever ascending like a sonic escalator to nowhere. Think of the sound from the movie Inception. You feel the tension rise, even though the pitch never truly climbs. Your brain expects change and fills in the gaps like an anxious film composer. So tonight, as you lie there listening to the steady drone of your ceiling fan or the faint whir of a distant street lamp transformer, remember, those sounds have pitch too. Maybe a low, comforting hum that grounds your thoughts, or a high, almost imperceptible whine that makes you squint in the dark, unsure if it's real. Your ears are reading the frequency of the world, translating vibrations into meaning, and occasionally into minor irritation. But that's the strange gift of pitch. It's not just a technical measurement, it's emotion, memory, annoyance, attraction, and mystery, all carried on a wave that vibrates just the right way. So next time something startles you awake with a squeal or keeps you up with a hum, just whisper to yourself, "Ah, a lovely 15,746 hertz. Delightful." You're just drifting off, 1 foot already in the land of dreams when a sudden clatter from the kitchen jerks you upright. It's not the nature of the sound that alarms you, it's the sheer volume. One plate tipping in the sink shouldn't make your heart sprint like that, but loudness isn't polite. It doesn't knock, it kicks the door in. And what you've just experienced is the force of decibels in action. Loudness, technically speaking, is the amplitude of a sound wave, how big the vibration is. Where pitch is about speed, loudness is about size. The larger the waves swing, the more pressure it exerts on your ears. You can feel it in your chest at a concert, in your feet during a thunderclap, and sometimes, if it's really bad, in your molars. That kitchen clatter, it may have lasted half a second, but it hit your ears like a mini sonic boom. The measurement we use for loudness is the decibel dB. But here's the twist, it's a logarithmic scale. That means every increase of 10 decibels is actually a tenfold increase in intensity. So while a conversation at 60 dB seems only a little louder than a whisper at 50 dB, it's actually 10 times more powerful. And that screaming toddler at 90 dB, yeah, 1,000 times more intense than your whisper. No wonder you wince. 0 decibels is considered the threshold of hearing, the softest sound a healthy human ear can detect. But that doesn't mean no sound. It just means barely detectable. A ticking watch might hover around 20 dB, a normal conversation, about 60, traffic, around 85, a rock concert, upwards of 110, and jet engines at takeoff, a spicy 140 decibels, which is loud enough to cause immediate ear pain. After that, things don't get louder so much as dangerously vibrating your internal organs. Historians still argue over who truly discovered the concept of loudness, but the term decibel was officially adopted in the early 20th century by engineers working at Bell Labs, named, of course, after Alexander Graham Bell. Originally, it was used to measure signal loss in telephone lines, but as with many things designed for polite society, it quickly found use in figuring out just how much noise people could endure before things got weird. There's a fine line between loud and physically damaging. Prolonged exposure to anything above 85 dB can start chipping away at your hearing, slowly, subtly, permanently. It's why your ears ring after a loud concert or fireworks show. That ringing is called temporary threshold shift, and while it usually fades, repeated episodes can lead to irreversible hearing loss. Yes, even if the band was totally worth it. Here's a quirky historical tidbit. In 1957, scientists built something called the Large Reverberation Room, a space designed to maximize sound reflection. Inside, they measured how loudness affected materials and humans. Volunteers with questionable judgment and strong eardrums were exposed to gradually increasing sound levels to test the threshold of pain. That magic number, around 130 dB, and yes, someone probably left with a headache. Then there's the infrasonic elephant in the room. How do loud sounds actually hurt you? Turns out it's not just the ears. At extreme levels, sound becomes a physical force. Bass waves at high decibels can shake walls, rattle organs, and in experimental settings, even make people feel nauseated or panicked. This has led to persistent rumors about brown notes, low-frequency sounds that supposedly cause, well, spontaneous digestive regret. Scientists tested it. No luck. or perhaps too much luck, depending on how you feel about mystery noises. But even without urban myths, we know that sound can do real harm. Soldiers have used sound grenades, also called stun grenades or flashbangs, to disorient enemies with a blast of 170 plus decibels. These don't explode in the traditional sense. They just generate a short burst of pressure so loud that the brain can't process anything else. It's less about pain and more about scrambled input. And yes, that's a real tactic in crowd control and combat. Yet loudness isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's comfort. Think of white noise machines, thunderstorm playlists, or that low, steady roar of an airplane cabin that makes Bobby's sleep and adults suddenly forget what day it is. White noise usually sits around 60-70 dB, just enough to mask sudden spikes in other sounds. It's not silence, it's controlled loudness. The brain does something interesting with consistent loudness. It adapts. If you stay in a noisy environment long enough, like living next to a train track or working in a bustling kitchen, you begin to tune it out. This is called auditory habituation. Your brain, overwhelmed by constant stimulation, simply mutes what it thinks you don't need. Helpful, but also a little rude. It's why you don't hear your fridge humming until someone points it out. And now, of course, you do. Some environments are deliberately loud. Think casinos, filled with machines designed to ping, chime, and erupt with applause. Not because they have to make noise, but because sound boosts excitement. It keeps people alert, moving, playing. It's audio psychology wrapped in neon. But let's flip the volume knob to the weird end. There's a place in Minneapolis called the anechoic chamber, an acoustically dead room designed to absorb 99.99% of all sound. No echoes, no reverb, just nothing. It holds the Guinness World Record for quietest place on Earth, and the longest anyone has voluntarily stayed in it, around 45 minutes. After that, the silence becomes oppressive. You start to hear your heartbeat, your lungs, the blood in your veins. Without external sound to anchor you, your brain begins to invent it. Hallucinations, buzzing, phantom whispers. Turns out loudness, even at low levels, anchors reality. So next time someone tells you to turn it down, just smile and say, sure, but only if we're staying below the threshold of permanent auditory nerve damage. Or maybe just wear headphones. And as you drift back into the dark tonight, let those quieter sounds take center stage. The ticking clock, the neighbor's distant TV, the wind curling under the window frame. They may be small, but now you know. It's not about size, it's about amplitude. And your ears are always listening, measuring, adjusting, trying to keep you safe from both silence and sound that punches you in the gut. The room quiets again, but something flickers at the edge of your attention. A subtle rustle outside, maybe, or the barely there flap of a moth against the window pane. Whatever it is, you didn't notice it first. Your pet did. Ears pricked, nose twitching, tail twitching like a built-in radar system. And that's when it hits you. You're not even close to being the best listener in your own home. Because when it comes to hearing, humans are somewhere in the middle of the pack. Not the worst, not by a long shot, but laughably outclassed by many creatures walking, flying, or swimming around you. And yes, that includes the bat currently fluttering in your attic walls and the elephant who can hear thunderstorms miles away with her feet. Let's start with the overachievers, bats. Masters of echolocation, bats emit high-frequency chirps, so high that you can't hear them at all. These ultrasonic pulses bounce off walls, trees, insects, and even mosquito wings, returning echoes in fractions of a second. The bat's brain processes the delay and direction of those echoes with such precision that it can chase a moth through total darkness without missing a beat. Meanwhile, you stub your toe on the coffee table trying to find your phone charger. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations understood how bats navigated in the dark. Some believed they had mystical sight. Others thought they flew blind on purpose, like little aerial daredevils. It wasn't until the late 18th century that Italian scientist Lazzaro Spallanzani ran experiments to show that bats could navigate without sight. But the real kicker came in the 20th century, when sonar and ultrasound revealed that bats had been doing a form of radar long before humans even thought of inventing submarines. On the other end of the frequency spectrum, we have elephants, enormous, rumbling creatures with shockingly subtle ears. Elephants communicate using infrasound, frequencies so low they fall beneath your hearing threshold. These low rumbles can travel through the ground for miles, vibrating the earth like a distant drumbeat. And yes, elephants pick them up not just with their ears, but through the sensitive pads on their feet and trunks. It's like surround sound, but via your toes. Some researchers believe elephants can detect distant storms, migrating herds, or even approaching danger, all through these deep, ground-hugging sound waves. They respond to infrasound calls with synchronized head bobs, foot stomps, and low rumbles of their own. It's an entire language you'll never hear, but rest assured, they're probably gossiping about us. Then there are dogs. Your loyal, slightly overdramatic friend can hear up to 45,000 Hz, nearly double your upper limit. That's why a barely audible squeak can send them leaping from a dead sleep, tail spinning like a helicopter blade. Their ears, those satellite dishes covered in fur, can pivot and focus, hunting in on tiny sounds like a radar tower on pause. You might think cats are similar, but they're even more fine-tuned. A cat can detect the rustle of a mouse in a field 10 meters away. That's not instinct. That's precision engineering. Their ears can rotate 180 degrees and move independently. You, meanwhile, can barely aim an earbud without poking yourself in the eye. Quirky fact: some species of fish can hear better than humans, despite having no external ears. The plainfin midshipman, for instance, a dull little fish with a big personality, sings love songs during mating season using its swim bladder as a resonance chamber. To the human ear, it sounds like a buzzing electric hum. To female midshipmen, it's the barry white of the bay. And let's not forget whales. Blue whales produce the loudest sound of any animal on Earth, up to 188 decibels underwater. That's louder than a jet engine. Their songs, rich in deep infrasonic tones, can travel thousands of kilometers across ocean basins. Historians have long wondered how ancient mariners described sea monsters or mysterious hums drifting across the waves. Some now believe early sailors were, unknowingly, hearing distant whale songs carried for miles through the saltwater deep. But not all animals hear in the way we think. Snakes, for example, don't have external ears at all, yet they can hear low-frequency vibrations through their jawbones pressed constantly against the ground. It's a sort of skeletal hearing, less precise than yours, but perfectly suited for detecting the thump of prey or the clumsy approach of an intruder. Owls, those quiet stalkers of the night, take the cake for sheer auditory finesse. Their ear openings are asymmetrical, one higher than the other. This allows them to pinpoint a sound's vertical position as well as its horizontal one. Combine that with a nearly silent flight and night vision, and you've got nature's perfect little hunter. You, on the other hand, flinch at the buzz of a fly. Even insects get in on the auditory action. The male katydid has ears on its front legs. The mantis has a single ear located on its abdomen. And moths. Some species have evolved ears specifically to detect bat echolocation clicks, so they can dodge mid-flight before becoming a midnight snack. It's an evolutionary arms race of sound, and we are the squishy bystanders. Still, for all your limitations, your ears are versatile. You can pick out one voice in a crowd, detect emotion in tone, and process complex rhythms and language. Your hearing is not the sharpest in the animal kingdom, but it is deeply connected to memory, meaning, and emotion. You might not catch the ultrasonic whispers of a bat, but you can weep at a cello's low C or recall an entire childhood from the first two notes of a jingle. Try getting a penguin to do that. So as you lie there now, listening to the rustle of night, just remember, you're part of a planet-wide orchestra of listeners. Some are better, faster, stranger. Some hear things you never will. But you, dear human, are the one who turns sound into story. And whether it's a whale's rumble, a moth's panic signal, or your cat casually knocking over a lamp at 3:07 a.m., every creature hears the world in its own odd, perfect way. You're nestled deeper under your blanket now, one foot poking out into the cooler air, when a strange thought settles in. Not all sound is heard, at least not by you. There are noises in the world that your ears will never register, sounds that are too low, too slow, too rumbly to stir even a flicker in your cochlea. But just because you can't hear them doesn't mean they're not there. Welcome to the shadowy realm of infrasound, where the world hums in low, deliberate waves beneath your awareness. Infrasound refers to sound waves below the frequency of human hearing, anything under 20 hertz. These waves are massive, in the sense that their wavelengths can stretch over hundreds of meters. Instead of tickling your eardrum, they push on your entire body like an invisible tide. They move through the ground, the sky, your ribcage. And while you may not hear them, your body notices. Elephants, as we mentioned, use infrasound to communicate across miles. But they're not alone. Giraffes, rhinos, even alligators produce these low-frequency calls, often as part of mating rituals or territory warnings. Whales sing deep infrasonic notes that ripple across oceans. And volcanoes, they rumble in infrasound before they erupt, the planet's own version of a warning growl. What makes infrasound particularly eerie is how it bypasses your ears and talks directly to your nervous system. At certain frequencies, especially around 17 Hz, it can induce discomfort, anxiety, even nausea. Some people report feeling uneasy or watched, like something's wrong but they don't know why. That's not paranoia. That's your body picking up cues your conscious mind can't decode. Historians still argue whether ancient cultures were aware of infrasound's effects. Some point to ancient temples built near fault lines or echo chambers that may have amplified low-frequency vibrations. Were these intended to induce spiritual experiences? Or were they just good acoustics paired with geological coincidence? The jury's still out, but the idea of sacred sound being more felt than heard has deep roots. Let's detour into fringe territory for a moment. In the late 1990s, a British engineer named Vic Tandy had a bizarre experience while working in a supposedly haunted lab. He felt uneasy, cold, watched, classic ghost story symptoms. But being a man of science, he investigated. Turns out, a faulty fan was emitting a near-silent infrasound at around 18.9 Hz, the exact resonant frequency of the human eyeball. It was, quite literally, shaking his vision just enough to cause vague shadows and a sense of unease. Once the fan was removed, the haunting stopped. So yes, it's possible some ghost stories are just unfortunate acoustics. And that brings us to the big one, nature's infrasound orchestra. Earthquakes, avalanches, storms, and tsunamis all generate infrasonic waves. Animals often react to these cues before humans do. Herds flee before tremors. Birds scatter before storms. There are even anecdotal reports of zoo animals packing frantically before seismic activity. Your dog freaking out for no reason at 3 a.m. It might be more than just raccoons. But here's the spooky part. Infrasound can travel ridiculously far. A single volcanic eruption can send low-frequency pulses around the planet multiple times. In 2022, when the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcano erupted in the South Pacific, It generated infrasonic waves detected around the globe. These waves were so massive and persistent that they kept circling the Earth for days, bouncing back and forth through the atmosphere like a planetary heartbeat. You didn't hear it, but Earth was humming a tune of its own. Some researchers are now exploring infrasound as a tool for planetary monitoring. By setting up infrasonic microphones, special sensors that pick up low-frequency sound, they can detect nuclear tests, asteroid impacts, and volcanic activity anywhere on Earth. It's like giving the planet a stethoscope, letting us listen in on the slow, deep groans of a living world. But humans don't just encounter infrasound by accident. We also create it. Wind turbines, diesel engines, large ventilation systems, they all produce low-frequency vibrations that can fill a space without ever entering the range of conscious hearing. Some people are highly sensitive to this, reporting headaches, fatigue, or unease near certain machines or buildings. It's controversial. Scientists still debate whether these symptoms are caused by infrasound or by the suggestion of it. But it's enough of a mystery that entire research groups are studying it. Here's a quirky detail. Some church organs, especially those built in the Gothic tradition, can play infrasonic notes. The lowest pipe might produce a frequency just under 16 Hz. The congregation can't hear it, but they feel it. A subtle quiver in the chest, a tingle in the spine. Pair that with stained glass, flickering candlelight, and centuries of incense, and you've got a recipe for divine goosebumps. And of course, Hollywood has figured this out. In some horror films, sound designers sneak in low-frequency effects, not audible but present. The goal? Induce a creeping sense of dread in the audience, even if they can't quite say why. It's emotional sleight of hand, achieved by vibrating your body without your permission. So tonight, as your house settles and your fridge hums and the world outside murmurs below your hearing threshold, know this: there is sound beneath sound. Not silence, but signals so deep and slow they slip beneath your awareness. Whispers in stone, songs in thunder, warnings in wind. Your ears may miss them, but your body doesn't. It listens in strange ways. And somewhere, miles from here, the Earth may already be humming the first notes of tomorrow's news. You blink at the ceiling in the soft dark, listening now for nothing in particular, and yet somehow you hear everything. The whoosh of air conditioning, the faint rustle of sheets, the low, internal hum of a world that never really stops. And then just like that, you remember a sound from long ago. The beep, then the blur of your very first ultrasound. You didn't hear it then, of course, not really. But from the moment before you were born, your life has been stitched with sound, including the kind you can't hear, including ultrasound. Ultrasound lives above the limits of human hearing, anything over 20,000 hertz. Your ears simply can't keep up, but that doesn't mean it's rare. On the contrary, it's everywhere. In medicine, navigation, cleaning products, dog toys, and the occasional confused dolphin trying to flirt with a boat motor. Where infrasound is deep and slow, ultrasound is fast, fine, and precise. It's the scalpel of the sonic world. Let's start where most of us meet it first, the womb. The medical ultrasound, that grainy black and white ripple of pixels, is actually a symphony of high-frequency echoes. A transducer sends out pulses of sound above 2 million hertz, so far beyond your ears it's laughable. These waves bounce off tissues and fluids inside the body. The machine listens for the echoes and then, like a bat flying blind, it builds a picture. Your first portrait, made of echoes. It's not new tech either. Historians credit the original idea to World War I sonar experiments. The military needed a way to detect enemy submarines in the dark waters. That same principle, using high-frequency sound to map invisible spaces, was eventually redirected inward. In 1958, obstetrician Ian Donald used industrial sonar to scan a pregnant woman's abdomen. He saw a fetus moving. From that moment on, humans began meeting themselves before birth through sound. Today's ultrasounds are more advanced, 3D, 4D live imaging, but the principle hasn't changed. Sound goes in, echoes come back, and with enough precision, those echoes tell a story. A tiny heart fluttering, a hiccup, a curled fist, a wiggly foot. There's something poetic about the fact that the earliest proof of life for many parents is not sight or touch, but a blurry sound made visible. But ultrasound isn't just for bobbies. It's used to detect tumors, measure blood flow, diagnose gallstones, and even blast apart kidney stones with targeted pulses. That's called lithotripsy, breaking rock with waves. And while it sounds medieval, it's far gentler than traditional surgery. All done without a single cut, just concentrated sound shaking things loose on a microscopic level. Here's a quirky one. Some high-end jewelry cleaners use ultrasonic waves to blast microscopic bubbles into cleaning solution. These bubbles collapse rapidly, creating tiny implosions that scrub dirt from even the tiniest crevices. It's called cavitation, and yes, it's your earrings being cleaned by violent, invisible explosions of sound. And it gets weirder. Scientists have recently started using focused ultrasound to treat neurological disorders like Parkinson's or essential tremors. By steering high-frequency sound into the brain, they can disrupt overactive neural pathways without opening the skull. It's non-invasive brain surgery, and it's as sci-fi as it sounds. But animals were doing this long before us. Dolphins and some whales use ultrasonic clicks for echolocation, much like bats. These clicks are so precise, they can distinguish between types of fish or even detect air pockets inside prey. There's even evidence dolphins can see through each other using sonar, producing echographic images of internal organs. In other words, they may have been doing ultrasound scans long before humans figured out how to interpret the echoes. Historians still argue whether ancient peoples knew anything about high-frequency sound. Some point to the shape of ancient flutes, tuned far above normal human hearing, possibly to communicate with animals or for ritual use. Others believe those were simply musical experiments. There's little hard evidence, but every few years someone claims an ancient artifact was tuned to resonate at special frequencies, whether or not our ears can verify it. More recently, engineers are using ultrasound for levitation. Yes, really. By focusing beams of high-frequency sound from multiple sources, they can trap small particles or even drops of liquid mid-air. It's not magic, it's the physics of pressure nodes. Sound waves create tiny pits of lower pressure, and with the right configuration, objects float inside them like lazy astronauts. Even in consumer electronics, ultrasound is sneaking in. Some smart devices use ultrasonic communication, inaudible pings that link your phone to other gadgets nearby. It's a new kind of handshake, and it raises some privacy eyebrows too. After all, if your phone can emit and detect sound you can't hear, what else is it listening for? Of course, not all ultrasonic encounters are delightful. Some pest repellents emit high-frequency chirps to scare away rodents or insects. These are supposed to be harmless to humans, but ask anyone with especially sharp hearing or tinnitus, and they might tell you otherwise. Then there are dog whistles, which produce a shrill tone only animals respond to. It's not that the sound doesn't exist, it's that you've been tuned out. Let's get slightly absurd now. There was once a theory that haunted houses were full of ultrasonic anomalies, that high-frequency waves might cause hallucinations, chills, or a sense of unease. While there's not much hard data to support it, it echoes the same idea we saw in infrasound. Your body reacts to sound it doesn't fully understand. Maybe ghosts are just standing waves bouncing off bad wallpaper. So as you lie there tonight, wrapped in the soft hush of the room, you're also surrounded by a different world. one filled with tiny pings and bouncing echoes too fast for your senses to follow. They skim past you, invisible, unheard, but still shaping the world around you. Sound, it turns out, doesn't stop when you stop listening. And somewhere deep inside your memory, a flickering image remains. A small black and white screen, a pulsing shape, a flick of movement that meant, there you are. There you've been all along. Sound seen, life echoing. The fan hums a low, steady rhythm now, and the quiet feels thick, almost tangible, like the world has put itself on mute. You exhale slowly, and for a moment it's easy to believe you've found silence. But let's not get too cozy with that word. Because silence, true silence, doesn't exist in the way you think it does. It's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of space. Stillness with structure, a breath between vibrations. And yes, even silence has rules. The idea of nothingness is tantalizing. A room where no sound lives. A moment so still that even your thoughts feel quieter. But real physical silence, the total absence of sound, is nearly impossible to achieve outside of specialized conditions. The universe is a noisy place. Air molecules bump into each other. Machines hum. Birds chirp. Your own body gurgles like an old coffee pot if you've had dairy too late in the day. There's always something. In everyday language, we use silence to describe a lack of loud, intentional noise. A quiet room, a pause in conversation, the long, awkward stillness after someone says something a little too honest at dinner. But acoustically, that's not silence. That's low decibel presence. Even when no one's speaking, the room might register at 30 to 40 dB. Think a library, a bedroom at night, or that soft fuzz your ears hear when everything else has gone to bed. True acoustic silence means no pressure waves, no vibrations. It's rare, it's unnatural, and for many people it's unbearable. Enter the anechoic chamber, those weirdly padded rooms designed to eliminate all echoes. Inside, walls are lined with foam wedges that trap and absorb every sound wave. Floors are suspended mesh. Even your footsteps go nowhere. The silence is so thick it starts to feel like weight pressing on your eardrums. People report strange things in these chambers, hearing their heartbeat, their blood, their lungs, even the creaking of their joints. Most can't stay inside longer than 30 to 45 minutes before they start to feel dizzy or disoriented. Not because of claustrophobia, but because your brain expects sound. It's waiting for feedback, for the next wave, for the next clue that the world still exists. In the absence of noise, your brain starts inventing some. Historians still argue whether certain ancient spaces, catacombs, monasteries, inner sanctums, were intentionally designed for silence. Some researchers believe monks used architectural tricks to mute echoes and create a sensory vacuum for meditative clarity. Others say the stone just happened to absorb sound well. Still, standing in those hushed spaces today, you can feel the reverence carved into the quiet. But silence isn't always peaceful. It can be weaponized. Think of silent treatments, used not just in relationships but in psychological operations. Isolation chambers in prisons, solitary confinement, deprivation experiments. When all noise is stripped away, people don't relax. They unravel. In 1951, psychologist Donald Hebb conducted sensory deprivation studies on volunteers who were paid to lie in soundproof, lightless rooms. Within hours, their minds began to wander. Within days, they hallucinated. The absence of input didn't clear their thoughts, it filled them with confusion. Yet we still chase silence. The world is so relentlessly noisy that silence has become a luxury. A remote cabin, a meditation app, a long hike into the woods where the only sound is the wind nudging branches into lazy applause. But even there, nature fills the quiet with rustles, creaks, distant bird calls. It's natural silence, a stillness shaped by context, not absence. There's a term for this kind of quiet, acoustic ecology, the study of the relationship between humans and the sonic environment. In this field, silence is not an empty space but a carefully balanced landscape. A forest with no birds, a troubling silence. A town with no background chatter, an eerie one. Sound, even soft and subtle, is how we know life is still happening around us. Here's a quirky detail. NASA once worried about the mental effects of silence on astronauts. In space, without air, there's no traditional sound. Inside spacecraft, ambient noise is tightly controlled. They even added mechanical hums to early capsules just so astronauts wouldn't feel unmoored. Total silence, it turns out, makes people feel untethered, floating through a soundless void. Not quite the spa day you'd expect. But silence isn't only environmental, it's cultural. In Western music, silence is marked with a rest, a pause, a moment between notes. In Japanese Zen practice, silence is a form of communication. In indigenous Australian ceremonies, it signals reverence. In courtroom dramas, it's tension you can slice with a gavel. Silence speaks. It punctuates. It stares you down across the dinner table. Still, we crave it. We build quiet rooms. We pay for soundproof windows. We buy noise-canceling headphones so we can create artificial silence in busy cafes. But even then, total quiet is elusive. Noise canceling doesn't remove sound, it creates anti-noise, a waveform that cancels the incoming wave. You're still surrounded by sound. It's just been shaped into something smoother, less jarring, easier to ignore. And let's not forget the silence of space. You've heard the tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream." That's because there's no air to carry vibrations. Space is a vacuum, and sound waves, those good old pressure changes, need a medium. You could blast a symphony from your helmet and no one would hear a thing unless they were physically touching you. It's not just quiet, it's void. But even in the deep silence of night, you hear something. Maybe not sound waves, maybe just your thoughts. Maybe just your body doing its own thing, lungs pumping, heart thumping, eyelids blinking dry. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's time's soft shuffle forward. Whatever it is, silence, real silence, has weight. So tonight, as you lie there, don't be fooled by the hush. The world is still vibrating, still echoing in corners you can't reach. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the pause between songs, the canvas between brushstrokes, the breath you didn't know you were holding. It is not nothing. It is everything waiting. You shift your head just slightly on the pillow and the world seems to change shape. The gentle hum you tuned out for hours takes on a new quality, a faint doubling, a blurred return, an echo, then another. You turn again and now it's gone. Welcome to one of sound's oldest tricks, reflection. Sound, it turns out, is not a polite guest. It doesn't always stay where it belongs. Sometimes it comes back. When a sound wave meets a surface, a decision must be made. Absorb, scatter, or bounce. And when it bounces just right, especially off something hard, flat, and distant enough, you get an echo, that ghost of your own voice flung back at you with perfect comedic timing. It's not an illusion. It's a delay, a physical round trip. Sound leaves your mouth, hits a wall, a mountain, a canyon cliff, and returns, just slow enough for your brain to notice the gap. That gap, that's your echo. Now if the delay is short, less than 0.1 seconds, your brain doesn't process it as an echo at all. It hears it as reverb, a sort of blended continuation of the original sound. Think cathedrals, caves, marble bathrooms. Your voice seems to stretch and shimmer. It's not repeating, it's lingering, a little sonic afterglow. Echoes and reverberation are often confused, but they're fundamentally different. Echoes are individual reflections, separate, distinct. Reverb is the accumulation of many tiny reflections so close together they smear into one sustained sound. Like pouring milk into coffee. The swirl becomes a single color, but you know it came from many movements. Historians still argue whether ancient architects understood these properties or just stumbled into them. The temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, for example, is famous for the echo it produces when you clap in front of the steps. The returning sound resembles the chirp of a sacred bird. Was this designed? Was it serendipity? Was it divine acoustics or just very lucky limestone? The debate continues. But humans have been chasing echoes for millennia. Ancient Greek amphitheaters were built with meticulous attention to sound reflection, their semicircular structures allowing actors to whisper from the stage and still be heard in the highest seats. The architecture became an instrument. Every curve mattered. And then there's the whispering gallery effect, a specific type of echo behavior found in domed spaces. In these spaces, a sound made at one end of the circular wall can be heard perfectly at the other, even if it's barely more than a breath. St. Paul's Cathedral in London is the most famous example. Two people can stand on opposite sides of the dome, murmur into the wall, and carry on a private conversation across the massive void, as if linked by invisible wire. There are modern whispering galleries too. Grand Central Station in New York has one near the Oyster Bar. If you face one corner and whisper, the person in the opposite diagonal corner hears every word. It's eerie the first time. You expect magic. You get physics. Echoes aren't just party tricks, though. Animals use them constantly. Bats, as you now know, use echolocation, an echo-based navigation system. So do dolphins and beluga whales. Even oil birds, nocturnal cave-dwelling birds in South America, emit clicks to find their way in complete darkness. It's less refined than bat sonar, but it works. You, meanwhile, fumble for a light switch if your phone flashlight dies. And let's not forget that humans once relied on echo, too. Certain indigenous groups in mountainous regions developed whistled languages, long, drawn-out tones that echoed across valleys, allowing messages to travel miles. In the Canary Islands, the Silbo-Gamero language uses echoes to send detailed sentences through the air. Words built on whistles, sentences sculpted in sound. There's a quirky modern version of this too. Cavers, those daring spelunkers who crawl into Earth's weirdest crevices, often rely on sound to judge space. A sharp clap or shout can tell them how big the chamber is. Long echo, big space. No echo, you're in a tight squeeze. If the sound doesn't bounce, neither will your helmet. Sometimes echoes come uninvited. Singers and sound engineers know this pain well. Feedback loops in microphones are caused by the mic picking up its own output, creating a scream that spirals into ear-piercing madness. That's echo gone rogue. In this case, the reflection becomes a loop, and the loop becomes a banshee. But echoes can be beautiful too. In music production, reverb and delay effects are added intentionally to give recordings a sense of space. A dry, echoless voice can feel cold. Add a little reverb, and suddenly you're in a concert hall, your voice stretched with grandeur. Even podcast hosts, those 21st century campfire storytellers, often tweak their vocal recordings to include just a whisper of reverb, just enough to keep your ears engaged. And then there are natural echo chambers, the kind you stumble into unexpectedly. The Echo Canyon Trail in Arizona, the fjords of Norway, the deep limestone caves in Slovenia, places where sound bounces like a tennis ball, returning to you as something stranger, older, a little less like your own voice. These places remind you that sound has shape, that it can travel and warp and return changed. You may have noticed this in your own home. Clap in a tiled bathroom and the sound cracks back at you. Do the same in a carpeted bedroom and it thuds into silence. Your walls, your floors, your furniture, they all act as conductors and dampeners. You live inside a small, private acoustic laboratory whether you realize it or not. Tonight, as your breathing slows and your thoughts soften, you may even start to hear your own body echo. A cough resonates in your chest. A sigh rolls back from the pillow. The sound of your shifting weight ripples through the mattress just slightly, like the sea bumping against a dock. Sound always returns in one way or another. Maybe softer, maybe blurred, but it comes back, like memories, like dreams, like your voice bouncing off the walls of the dark. Something familiar drifts into your thoughts now. Maybe it's the soft melody of a song you haven't heard in years, or just the memory of a rhythm tapping gently in your mind. Either way, it's there, looping quietly like a lullaby. Because somewhere deep in your brain, sound isn't just something you hear, it's something you feel. And nothing captures that better than music. You already know music is made of sound. That part's obvious. But what's less obvious is how music, unlike other sounds, manages to stir up memories, emotions, goosebumps, and occasionally full-blown existential crises. It's not just noise and rhythm. It's structured sound with purpose. And your brain eats it up like a dessert it didn't ask for but absolutely deserves. Music is built from vibrations, just like every sound. But what sets it apart is how those vibrations are arranged. Notes in specific frequencies, durations, and intervals. Combine those with rhythm and dynamics, and you've got a system that transcends time, language, and geography. A sequence of air pressure changes can make you weep. That's not a metaphor. That's science, baby. The foundation of music lies in harmonics. When you pluck a string or vocalize a note, it doesn't just vibrate at one frequency. It produces overtones, smaller vibrations layered on top of the main one. These overtones are what give each instrument its unique timbre or tonal quality. It's why a flute sounds different from a cello, even if they're playing the same pitch. It's also why you can recognize your mom's voice from across a grocery store, even if she's only whispering your full name in that "you're in trouble" tone. Historians still argue over where music truly began. Was it drumming on logs around a fire? Bone flutes found in prehistoric caves? The rhythmic clapping of hands during ritual dances? The oldest known instrument, a vulture bone flute discovered in Germany, dates back over 40,000 years. But vocal music likely predates even that. After all, your body is a built-in instrument. Lungs, vocal cords, lips, tongue. You were designed to make noise. Even animals join the party. Birds sing in identifiable structures. Humpback whales compose lengthy, evolving songs passed from pod to pod. Some monkeys have duets, while wolves harmonize in layered howls. Nature didn't wait for humans to invent music. It was already humming along. And yet music isn't universal in form, only in function. Scales and rhythms vary wildly across cultures. Western music loves the 12-note scale, but others use 5-note pentatonics, microtones, or full quarter-tone systems. To Western ears, some of these sound off or dissonant, but that's just cultural tuning. What feels jarring to you might be a lullaby somewhere else. Ever heard of the shepherd tone? It's an auditory illusion. Multiple tones layered to sound like they're constantly rising or falling in pitch, without ever actually getting higher or lower. It's like an Escher staircase for your ears. Movie sound designers love it because it builds tension without release. Your brain senses escalation, but the elevator never stops. And then there's rhythm, that glorious ticking backbone of music. Rhythm gives structure to sound, organizes it into patterns that your body can't help but respond to. Foot tapping, head nodding, full body dancing in the privacy of your kitchen at 2 a.m. Why do we do this? Scientists believe our brains are wired for pattern recognition, and rhythm, especially repetitive rhythm, hits the reward centers like a jackpot. There's a reason bobbies instinctively bob to music long before they understand language. Your brain anticipates beats, and when those expectations are met or playfully defied, it lights up. Rhythm makes time physical. That's why music can feel fast, slow, elastic. It bends the clock, at least in your mind. Let's get weird for a second. Some researchers believe music evolved as a form of social glue, a way to bond communities through shared emotional experiences. Singing together, dancing together, even just sitting together listening to the same tune can foster a sense of connection. Military units have marching chants, churches have hymns, sports fans have chants that turn stadiums into thunderous echo chambers. That's not just fun, it's synchronization. And your brain loves being in sync. There's even evidence that music can reduce pain, not metaphorically, biologically. Studies show that patients who listen to music during surgery or recovery often require less pain medication. The music doesn't heal the wound, but it helps regulate breathing, lower anxiety, and distract the mind from discomfort. It's not a cure, but it is a balm. On the flip side, some sounds trigger intense discomfort. The so-called devil's interval, a musical interval called the tritone, was once considered so dissonant that it was avoided for centuries. It shows up in horror movie scores for a reason. Your brain doesn't like it. It feels unresolved, like a question that never gets answered. Composers have used it for centuries to build suspense or signal unease. Quirky sidebar. In 1977, NASA launched the Golden Record aboard the Voyager spacecraft, a message to the universe containing greetings in multiple languages, natural sounds, and yes, music. Bach, Beethoven, and Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good. Somewhere out in interstellar space, that record is still flying, carrying Earth's greatest hits across the void. The ultimate mixtape, traveling at 38,000 miles per hour. Even silence in music is meaningful. Composers use rests, pauses between notes, to create drama, space, reflection. John Cage took it to the extreme in his famous piece, 433, which consists of 4 minutes and 33 seconds of intentional silence. The music, he claimed, was everything else you heard in that space. The audience shifting, breathing, the ambient sound of the room. It was radical. It still gets argued about in music schools to this day. So tonight, as your thoughts drift through fragments of melody, maybe something you hummed earlier in the shower, or a song that scored your most recent heartbreak, remember this. Music is more than sound. It's memory, emotion, geometry in motion, a coded vibration that slips past logic and nestles directly into your bloodstream. It doesn't matter if you're tone deaf or a trained pianist. Your brain knows music. Your bones know rhythm. Your heart, beating away in 4/4 time, is a drummer that never takes a break. You swallow gently, feel the slight shift in your throat, and maybe, just maybe, you hum a quiet note to yourself. Not loudly, not for anyone else. Just enough to feel that tiny vibration bloom somewhere behind your collarbone. And just like that, you're using your voice, your very own built-in bioacoustic marvel. It's a strange thought, isn't it? That talking is just controlled noise. That everything you've ever said, sung, or whispered started with a puff of air and a little fleshy machinery in your neck. But tonight, you're going to meet the orchestra behind your words, your vocal system. It starts with breath. You inhale, filling your lungs, stacking oxygen like a musician preparing to play a note. And then you exhale, not all at once, but carefully, managing airflow with the precision of a flute player. That air travels up your trachea, reaching your larynx, a small structure often called your voice box, nestled just behind your Adam's apple. Inside it, the vocal folds, 2 bands of muscle and tissue that stretch across the airway like a pair of soft gates. When you speak or sing, these folds come together and vibrate as air passes through them. They open and close hundreds of times per second, literally chopping the airflow into sound waves. That's your fundamental frequency or pitch, a low pitch. Your folds are thick and relaxed, flapping slowly. A high pitch. They're tightened and zipping back and forth like a flag in a hurricane. You are, in a very real sense, buzzing like a reed instrument made of meat. Sleep tight. Historians still argue over how early humans developed speech. Some believe it evolved as a companion to gesture, adding vocal punctuation to body language. Others point to sudden anatomical shifts, like the descended larynx, as evidence of a more rapid vocal evolution. What's certain is that once we had it, we never shut up again. Language, singing, shouting across canyons. It all started with a pair of vibrating folds and a strong set of lungs. Once that basic vibration is produced, it needs shaping. That's where your vocal tract comes in, a customizable sound tunnel made of your throat, mouth, and nose. It's where raw sound gets sculpted into vowels and consonants. Think of your tongue, lips, teeth, and soft palate as sliders and levers on a soundboard. They don't create the sound, they shape it. That's why you can mimic accents, chew your words, or sing opera with proper training. It's all resonance manipulation. And resonance is everything. When you speak, your chest, skull, sinuses, and even your mouth cavity all act as resonance chambers, amplifying and coloring the sound. That's why your recorded voice always sounds foreign to you. You're used to hearing it from the inside out, bone-conducted and echo-rich. On tape, you finally hear what the world hears, thinner, flatter, and somehow less majestic. Sorry. Let's get a little quirky. In Mongolian throat singing, vocalists manipulate multiple resonance points to produce 2 or even 3 distinct pitches at once. It's like listening to a human didgeridoo and flute at the same time. Some singers can isolate overtones so cleanly, you'd swear there were 2 people in the room. But it's all one voice, just expertly shaped airflow bouncing through the body like a cathedral of sound. And here's a marvel. Birds also use resonance chambers, but their system is entirely different. Instead of a larynx, birds have a syrinx, a split vocal organ located where the trachea forks into the lungs. Some birds can control each branch independently, producing harmonies all by themselves. A songbird is, effectively, a duet wrapped in feathers. But back to you. Your voice is more than a tool, it's a fingerprint. No 2 are exactly alike. Your vocal folds are unique in size, tension, and shape. Even identical twins sound different. That's why voice recognition software needs dozens of samples to identify you accurately. It's not just the sound, it's the rhythm, pitch, cadence, and subtle quirks like how you breathe between words. And then there's the emotional layer. You don't just speak in frequencies, you speak in feelings. Happiness lifts your pitch and quickens your pace. Sadness lowers it. Anger sharpens it. Fear might make it crack. You can hear a lie in someone's voice before you consciously recognize it. That's prosody, the music within speech. You're not just saying words, you're scoring them like a soundtrack. In fact, you've probably heard of vocal fry, that gravelly, creaky tone people sometimes use at the end of sentences. Often criticized, especially when women do it, it's actually just another register of your voice. It happens when the vocal folds close loosely, allowing air to bubble through in a slow, irregular pattern. Technically, it's the lowest vocal register. Used sparingly, it can signal relaxation or informality. Overused, it makes you sound like you've been whispering into a volcano. On the other extreme, there's falsetto, a register where the vocal folds are stretched thin and only partially vibrating. It allows higher pitches, but lacks the rich harmonic resonance of your chest voice. Think Bee Gees, or cartoon chipmunks, or that one guy at karaoke who really shouldn't have picked Queen. And then we have whistle register, the highest vocal register of all, used by only a few singers on Earth. Mariah Carey, this is your cue. Here, the vocal folds don't vibrate at all. Instead, the airflow pushes through a tiny opening, creating an extremely high-pitched whistle. It's rare, hard to control, and often sounds like a teapot falling in love with a fire alarm. But no matter how you use your voice, singing, speaking, whispering threats to your coffee maker, you're constantly balancing airflow, muscle tension, resonance, and articulation. It's a full-body process. And unlike other instruments, your voice changes with age, health, emotion, and even the weather. It cracks, warms, stiffens, deepens. You can lose it. You can train it. And if you're lucky, you'll find that one note that feels like you, the sound that matches the shape of your thoughts. So tonight, as you exhale that final breath before drifting off, know that every word you've ever said has traveled farther than you think. Through air, through ears, through hearts. Your voice isn't just sound, it's signal, identity, presence. It's your echo still humming somewhere out there, long after the room has gone quiet. A breeze brushes against the window, soft and indifferent as you sink even deeper into your mattress. Your thoughts are slower now, thoughts with trailing ends and echoing vowels. Somewhere in this gentle descent, you think of the way someone says your name. Not just what they say, but how they say it. The way it curves or flattens. The melody tucked into each syllable. That's the magic of speech. It's not just vocabulary, but shape, color, and sound. And nowhere does that come through more clearly than in accents and dialects. Those invisible fingerprints of geography, identity, and story. When you speak, you don't just pronounce words, you reveal where you've been. Every vowel you stretch, every consonant you soften, carries the shadows of your hometown, your parents' voices, maybe even the street you grew up on. Language is sound, but accent is sculpture. It's the same clay shaped differently. Take the word water. You might say it with a crisp T, like slicing paper. Or maybe it comes out as wada, gliding along the inside of your mouth like a lazy river. Same word, different rhythm, different tone. Suddenly it's a clue, a tell, a breadcrumb trail back to Jersey, to London, to Delhi, to Sydney, to somewhere specific. Accents happen because humans are sound imitators. From birth, we mimic the rhythms we hear. Not just the words, but the prosody, the musical quality of speech, pitch, stress, timing. That's why a child raised in Tokyo will sound Tokyo-born, even if biologically they're from Glasgow. Your mouth learns to dance like the voices around you. Historians still argue whether accents began as survival tools, ways to identify members of your tribe from potential threats, or whether they emerged simply from isolation, as groups developed their own shorthand for common phrases. Either way, accents act like spoken maps, not GPS coordinates, but acoustic geography. And then there are dialects, a step deeper than accent. A dialect is more than pronunciation. It includes grammar, vocabulary, idioms. Think y'all versus you lot, or pop versus soda versus Coke, yes, even when it's Sprite. In some dialects, double negatives are standard. I ain't never done that. In others, tense markers disappear altogether. She done gone. These variations aren't lazy. They're rules, just different ones. Every dialect has structure, history, and a fiercely loyal fan base. Here's a quirky linguistic footnote. In 1859, a Cornish fisherman named William Bottrell wrote down his village's entire fishing vocabulary, over 300 words that no outsider would understand. Specific terms for tides, nets, and fish movements. A complete dialect of the sea, shaped by need, place, and weather. Language is never static. It grows where it's planted. And the brain is astonishingly good at decoding accents. Studies show that within milliseconds of hearing someone speak, your brain begins placing them geographically and socially. You don't just hear how someone talks. You start making guesses, sometimes unconscious ones, about who they are. Smart, local, foreign, friendly. All of that rides on vowels and consonants. But there's a darker side to this auditory sorting. Accents can carry stigma. A regional drawl might be unfairly judged as less intelligent. A non-native accent might be met with skepticism, even if the speaker is fluent. Linguists call this accent bias, and it's a form of prejudice as slippery as it is persistent. Your ears aren't neutral. They come preloaded with assumptions. And yet accents are resilient. Even in a world of global media and constant movement, people keep them. Sometimes proudly, sometimes unconsciously, and sometimes they change on purpose. There's a phenomenon called code switching where people alter their accent or dialect depending on the social context. A professional voice at work, a home voice at the dinner table, a private voice just for loved ones. Each one true, each one real. You've probably experienced this. Maybe you clean up your speech around certain people, or drop into a familiar rhythm when talking to family. Maybe you've caught yourself unconsciously mirroring someone's speech mid-conversation. That's called linguistic accommodation, and it's basically your brain saying, "Hey, let's meet them halfway." And then there are chameleons, people who pick up accents wherever they go. Linguists call this phonetic drift. Spend enough time in a new region and your vowels begin to soften, your rhythms shift. It's not a performance, it's adaptation. Your ears take in the music of the place and your mouth starts humming along. Some accents are dying, others are being revived. In parts of Scotland, efforts are underway to preserve Gaelic pronunciation and dialects that have nearly vanished. In the US, Appalachian English, once mocked, is now being studied for its richness and historical ties to Elizabethan speech patterns. Yes, you read that right. Some phrases spoken in the hollers of Kentucky may have closer roots to Shakespearean English than modern London does. And of course, there's the future. Voice assistants like Siri and Alexa are learning to recognize regional accents, though not without hiccups. One Scottish man reportedly shouted "Play the Proclaimers" for 5 minutes before Alexa finally gave up and played Coldplay instead. Accent recognition is a challenge. Machines don't grow up listening. They calculate, they guess, and sometimes they guess hilariously wrong. But you hear nuance. You notice when someone says car with a flat A or when they put a little lilt at the end of a sentence. Maybe you even mimic it without realizing. That's not mockery, that's mirroring. It's the sound of empathy with a rhythm. Tonight, as your thoughts curl into softer shapes, maybe you'll remember the way someone once said your name. Not just the syllables, but the tone, the accent, the specific soundscape of affection. That's the gift of speech. It doesn't just carry information. It carries emotion, identity, place. And whether your voice carries the clipped syllables of New England, the slow vowels of the South, the sing-song of the Welsh hills, or the rolling consonants of the Caribbean, know this. Your sound is your story. Spoken geography. Sonic autobiography. A distant rumble rattles your window for half a second, subtle but undeniable. Your breath catches, was that thunder, a truck, something else entirely? It fades almost as soon as it came, leaving your chest humming with aftershock. That wasn't just a noise. That was a pressure wave, fast and rude. And if it had been just a bit more dramatic, you'd have experienced one of sound's most spectacular feats, the sonic boom. Let's be clear, most sounds play by the rules. They travel through air at a set speed, a leisurely 343 meters per second at sea level, give or take a few based on temperature and humidity. But what happens when something moves faster than the speed of sound? That's when physics throws on sunglasses and starts making a scene. When an object travels through air, it creates pressure waves. Think of them like ripples ahead of a boat. At normal speeds, these ripples spread out and dissipate. But once an object moves faster than sound can travel when it goes supersonic, those pressure waves can't get out of the way fast enough. They stack, they build, they compress into a shockwave. And when that shockwave hits your ears, you don't just hear it, you feel it. That sharp, thunderous crack, that's a sonic boom. It's not the plane breaking the sound barrier. There's no actual wall to shatter. It's the sound of compressed air collapsing behind the speeding object. It's a slap from the sky, a kind of sonic announcement. Something just went way too fast for comfort. The first human to do this intentionally was test pilot Chuck Yeager, who, in 1947, flew the Bell X-1 aircraft faster than sound and lived to brag about it. Historians still argue whether he was truly the first or simply the first documented case. But either way, that sonic boom marked a milestone in aviation history and made a lot of cows very, very nervous. Booms like that used to terrify people. Before supersonic flight was understood, towns would report mysterious skyquakes, sudden, unexplained noises that shook windows and rattled nerves. Only later did we realize it was jets or missiles overhead, slicing the sky like invisible razors. Even now, sonic booms can startle people who have never heard one. It's not just loud, it's rude, an air horn played directly into your skeleton. And yet there's beauty in the phenomenon. The Mach cone, the three-dimensional V-shaped wave left trailing behind a supersonic object, is an elegant visual of pure physics. If you've ever seen footage of a jet forming a sudden cloud halo, that's a vapor cone, the visible cousin of a sonic boom. It's caused by sudden pressure drops and condensation around the aircraft. It doesn't make the boom, but it's the moment you can see sound being outpaced. Quirky fact, lightning and meteors can produce sonic booms too. A large meteor entering Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic speeds will generate a crack that echoes for miles. In 2013, the Chelyabinsk meteor over Russia caused a massive boom that shattered windows and injured over 1,000 people, most from flying glass. The rock didn't hit the town, the sound did. And it's not just military aircraft. NASA has studied how to reduce the impact of sonic booms on communities, using specially shaped planes designed to spread out the shockwave. The goal? Low-boom aircraft, jets that can fly supersonic without sounding like a cannon just exploded over your grandmother's porch. There's even a debate in the world of commercial aviation. Remember the Concorde? That sleek, needle-nosed marvel could fly from New York to London in under 4 hours, but it was restricted to overwater routes because of its thunderous booms. Cities didn't like the surprise, so it died a quiet death, not from safety issues, but from being too loud in all the wrong places. Today, startups and space agencies are racing to build a quieter successor. Because apparently, people want to go fast without waking the neighbors. But sonic booms aren't just a human fascination. Whales, believe it or not, have been known to slap their tails on the surface of the water with enough force to create underwater shockwaves. It's not exactly a boom in the air, but it's still a supersonic signal, loud, fast, and often a warning. Don't mess with a 40-ton singer with mood swings. And speaking of the sea, pistol shrimp, yes, actual shrimp, can snap their claws with such speed that the collapsing bubble creates a shockwave and a tiny flash of light. It's technically a cavitation bubble, not a sonic boom, but the energy is comparable. That's right, shrimp with built-in sonic weapons. Nature never stops showing off. So what about breaking the sound barrier yourself? Not in a jet, but just by moving. Well, your body probably won't manage it, but bullwhips do. That familiar crack at the end of a whip, that's the tip breaking the sound barrier. It coils and snaps forward so quickly that it creates a miniature sonic boom. Cowboys have been sonic pioneers this whole time. Even some bullets and artillery shells break the barrier, creating a supersonic crack as they travel. It's why gunshots often sound sharper and more violent than the mere impact would suggest. The sound isn't just from the explosion. It's from the object itself outrunning its own voice. And here's something else. Once an object goes supersonic, it's not just about speed, it's about resistance. The air in front of it can't get out of the way, creating intense friction and heat. That's why spacecraft need heat shields to survive re-entry. They're punching through layers of compressed atmosphere, generating a symphony of shockwaves as they scream home. Tonight, as the world settles around you, the air feels still. But overhead, high above the clouds, there may be jets pushing past sound, whispers of boom trailing behind them. You won't hear it not from here, but the sky remembers. The atmosphere bends. The sound waits, trailing long behind its source. And so does your breath, still slowed, still soft, vibrating just under your awareness. Sound surrounds us, even when it breaks away entirely, moving too fast to be caught. But it leaves its fingerprints, a tremble in the glass, a ripple in the wind, a moment that passes before you can name it. Somewhere below you, far below, past the floor, the pipes, and the dry earth, an entire world of sound moves through the water. You can't hear it from where you lie, of course, but it's happening. A muffled symphony plays through oceans and lakes, rivers and reefs, bouncing off hulls and echoing through trenches. Because even under the crushing silence of the sea, sound is very much alive. In fact, it thrives there. Tonight, we dive into underwater acoustics, where pressure sings and wails, write ballads longer than your last relationship. Sound travels faster in water than in air, about 1,480 meters per second, over 4 times faster than it does above the surface. That's because water molecules are packed tightly together, so vibrations pass between them more efficiently. The result? Sound in water doesn't just move quickly, it travels far, really far. Low-frequency sounds can stretch for hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, wrapping around continents, slipping through thermal layers like letters delivered in slow motion. And in this submerged world, the biggest divas are the whales. Blue whales, the largest animals to ever live, produce low-frequency calls that are not only louder than jet engines, clocking in at around 188 decibels, but also long and mournful. These deep, rumbling vocalizations can travel across entire ocean basins. One whale's song might be heard by another halfway around the world, carried through darkness and depth like a message in a bottle that never surfaces. Historians still argue whether early sailors heard whale songs without realizing what they were. Ancient logs speak of the sea groaning, or strange musical moans from the depths. For centuries, no one knew these were love songs, territorial calls, or navigational signals. It wasn't until hydrophones, underwater microphones, were developed during World War II that scientists truly began listening to the watery choir. During the Cold War, the U.S. Navy built massive sonar arrays to monitor submarines. What they accidentally discovered was a world filled with whale chatter, dolphin squeals, and the creaks and groans of the shifting seafloor. The ocean, it turned out, had always been talking. We just weren't tuned in. And speaking of dolphins, those high-frequency squeals aren't just for show. Dolphins use a form of echolocation more precise than any military sonar. They emit bursts of clicks, then interpret the returning echoes to determine the size, shape, and even the density of objects. They can see with sound, detecting a ping-pong ball from across a pool or distinguishing between different metals hidden in identical boxes. It's underwater MRI, powered by built-in sonar. Some researchers even believe dolphins can use their echolocation to recognize pregnancy in humans, sensing the tiny heartbeat or fluid shifts of a fetus. It's not proven, but many anecdotal accounts say dolphins become especially attentive around pregnant swimmers, sometimes even pressing their heads gently to the belly as if listening. Then there are fish, who communicate in less obvious but no less musical ways. Some grunt, some drum, some vibrate their swim bladders to produce rhythmic pulses. The oyster toadfish makes a foghorn-like bellow during mating season that sounds absurdly mechanical, like an old engine refusing to start. Not exactly Barry White, but apparently it gets the job done. And the coral reefs, they're not silent cities. Newly hatched fish use sound to locate home, following the crackle and pop of crustaceans among the coral. Reefs are alive with the sonic bustle of shrimp snapping, fish nibbling, and waves slapping against rock. Scientists have even used underwater speakers to broadcast healthy reef sounds to damaged areas, tricking young fish into settling there to kickstart regeneration. But underwater acoustics isn't all nature and lullabies. Humans have added their own layers of noise, and not always helpfully. Cargo ships, oil drilling, and military sonar create constant low-frequency hums that interfere with marine life communication. Some whale pods have shifted their calls to higher frequencies just to be heard over the traffic. Others have gone silent, waiting for the noise to die down. One particularly disturbing case involved naval sonar tests linked to mass strandings of beaked whales. The loud sonar pulses caused disorientation, leading the animals to beach themselves in panic. Underwater noise pollution isn't just annoying, it can be lethal. It's the maritime version of blasting death metal at full volume in a library for days on end. Nobody thrives, everyone leaves. Yet there's a silver lining. Scientists and activists are developing quieter propeller systems, rerouting shipping lanes away from whale habitats, and even creating underwater sound, quiet zones. Acoustic ecology, it turns out, doesn't stop at the surface. Quirky detail. Some artists have taken hydrophones into the ocean to compose music from natural marine sounds. There are entire albums of whale duets, choral clicks, and underwater thunder. It's haunting, oddly familiar, and deeply soothing, as if the ocean's pulse has been slowed down just enough for you to hear the lullaby it's been singing all along. And then, of course, there are shipwrecks, long-dead boats that still echo with history, literally. Sound bounces off rusted hulls and sunken structures in strange, metallic ways. In some underwater caves, divers report hearing odd resonances, whispers, moans, shifting hums that feel eerily like voices. They aren't ghosts. They're echoes caught in tight spaces, bouncing in loops between ancient walls. Tonight, as you lie surrounded by the stillness of dry land, try to imagine that vast aquatic world pulsing just beneath the surface. A place where sound travels faster and farther. A place where songs are measured in kilometers, not minutes. A place where one deep note can ripple across the globe without ever breaking the surface tension. You won't hear it from here, but it's happening, right now. The sea is talking, it always has been. A siren howls in the distance, slicing through the quiet with surgical precision. It rises, falls, loops again, a sound designed not to be ignored. You don't know where it's coming from or who it's for, but your body reacts anyway. Heart rate ticks up, muscles twitch. There's something primal in your bones that responds to sharp, sudden noise. It's not just alarm, it's defense. Because sound, for all its beauty, can also be a weapon. Tonight, you're stepping into the stranger, darker territory of sound as force. From protest control to battlefield disruption, from riot suppression to psychological pressure. Sound that doesn't just travel, sound that shoves. Let's start with the LRAD, or long-range acoustic device. On the outside, it looks like a black satellite dish crossed with a soundbar. But when activated, it produces an extremely focused beam of sound, high decibel, highly directional, and physically painful at close range. It's not a speaker, it's a sound cannon. Originally developed for use by the military, the LRAD can emit warnings, instructions, or deterrent tones at over 150 decibels. That's louder than a gunshot. The idea is to incapacitate or scatter crowds without using bullets or tear gas. But it's not soft. The human ear begins to register pain around 130 decibels. Sustained exposure can cause nausea, disorientation, even permanent hearing damage. Protesters call it the pain ray. Historians still argue whether early empires used sound intentionally in battle. There are ancient accounts of Roman horns, Greek war chants, and even Babylonian drums meant to intimidate the enemy before the first sword was ever drawn. Whether these were psychological tactics or early attempts at acoustic warfare is unclear, but the goal was the same: shake the enemy's nerves before the fight even begins. In modern times, psychological sound tactics have become strangely sophisticated. During the U.S. invasion of Panama in 1989, American troops blasted rock music at the Vatican embassy to pressure dictator Manuel Noriega into surrender. The playlist, Van Halen, The Clash, and I Fought the Law on a loop. It wasn't just noise. It was carefully chosen to be irritating, disorienting, and relentless. He surrendered after 10 days, probably with a headache. In Guantanamo Bay, interrogators reportedly used high-volume music as a form of sensory overload. Metallica, Barney the Dinosaur, Britney Spears, played for hours, even days. The effect isn't just annoyance, it's exhaustion. The brain struggles to process the repetitive input, breaking down normal emotional and cognitive responses. It's not torture in the traditional sense, but it is mental erosion by volume. And then there's the mosquito, a device that emits an ultra-high frequency tone audible mostly to people under 25. The pitch is so sharp that adults often don't notice it. Shopping centers and apartment buildings have used it to discourage loitering, driving away younger crowds without any physical confrontation. It's legal in many places, but deeply controversial. After all, it targets an age group, not behavior. Even architecture has joined the sonic battlefield. Some public spaces are now designed with hostile acoustics, structures that amplify undesirable noise or produce unpleasant echoes. Think bus shelters with built-in resonance to make loud talking unbearable, or benches fitted with hidden speakers that play high-frequency static when groups gather. It's crowd control through ambient discomfort. Let's not forget the riot siren, a low-frequency blast that causes instant nausea and spatial disorientation. The mechanism is similar to what you'd feel standing next to a subwoofer turned up too high. The sound bypasses your ears and goes straight to your organs. It doesn't hurt your hearing. It just makes everything inside you feel wrong. And yet, sound as weapon isn't always violent. Sometimes it's emotional warfare. Crowds at sports events create intentional sonic walls to rattle visiting teams. The roar of a stadium can reach 120 decibels, just under the threshold of pain. Some stadiums are built to trap sound and throw it back onto the field, turning the crowd into a thundering, destabilizing presence. It's not strategy, it's pressure. There's even acoustic camouflage. Some military vehicles now come equipped with noise-canceling systems that emit counterfrequencies, actively suppressing engine noise to hide their approach. It's not just silence, it's engineered silence, the auditory version of an invisibility cloak. Quirky fact: during World War II, Allied forces used deceptive sound recordings to fake tank battalions and construction zones, projecting them through loudspeakers to confuse enemy reconnaissance. Fake armies, real speakers. It was called Operation Pastel. You can't make this stuff up. And the civilian world, we've got our own arsenal. Think of car alarms, train horns, security sirens, and personal alarms that emit high-pitched shrieks when activated. These aren't gentle nudges. They're sonic panic buttons, designed to overwhelm, confuse, repel. Of course, not all weaponized sound is sinister. Sometimes it's just annoying. Restaurant playlists carefully calibrated to speed up turnover. Retail music designed to make you linger longer. Elevator music, bland, inoffensive, but psychologically calming. These are quieter tactics, but they still work. Your brain is listening, whether you are or not. But the question remains, when does sound become unethical? When does it cross from nuisance to harm? That's a debate without a clear answer. Some say it depends on volume. Others say intent. But either way, our ability to use sound to influence, manipulate, or repel is only growing, and the tools are getting smaller, cheaper, and more portable. Tonight, as your room settles into stillness, the idea that sound can cause pain might seem far away, but it's real. The air itself can be bent into a blunt instrument, and the ears, the same ones that catch lullabies and whispered secrets, can also absorb confusion, fatigue, even fear. But maybe the most powerful weaponized sound of all, a perfectly timed silence, one that follows tension, one that holds a pause just a little too long, one that makes you lean in, heartbeat drumming, unsure what comes next. Because in the end, sound isn't always about volume. Sometimes it's about timing, direction, intention, and a whisper delivered just right can echo louder than any scream. The walls around you don't look like much right now. Just quiet panels, maybe a poster or two, maybe a corner where the paint peels ever so slightly. But make no mistake, they're shaping the sound of everything you hear. Every room you've ever been in has played a part in your listening experience, whether you realized it or not. Welcome to the realm of architectural acoustics, where buildings don't just hold people, they orchestrate them. At its core, acoustics is about how sound behaves in space. It bounces, bends, dissipates, and no two rooms are the same. A whisper in a cathedral doesn't land the same way it does in a walk-in closet. A guitar strum in a concrete stairwell becomes a symphony of echoes. Sound has a physical presence, and buildings, intentionally or not, respond to it. Some of the world's oldest structures reveal an astonishing grasp of acoustics. The ancient Greeks engineered open-air theaters so precisely that an actor's unamplified voice could reach thousands. The Theater of Epidaurus, for instance, built in the 4th century BCE, has such perfect geometry that you can hear someone crumpling paper from the back row. Historians still argue whether this was advanced science or happy accident, but the result is the same. A sonic marvel carved in stone. Meanwhile, in India, the Gol Gumbaz, a massive mausoleum with a central dome over 40 meters wide, features a whispering gallery where a soft murmur at one wall can be clearly heard on the opposite side. The acoustics are so sharp that even slight coughs are magnified, and tour guides have been known to whisper dramatic stories from one end while wide-eyed visitors gasp from the other. Then there's the Pantheon in Rome, with its massive oculus and coffered dome. Though not intentionally designed as a concert hall, it creates a lush, spacious reverb that adds grandeur to any sound. And the ancient architects didn't need a decibel meter. They had intuition, material knowledge, and centuries of trial and error carved into their blueprints. Fast forward to modern times, and acoustics has become both science and art. Concert halls are designed with obsessive care. The Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, for instance, was a nightmare acoustical puzzle before becoming a triumph. Designed by Frank Gehry with input from master acoustician Yasuhisa Oda, its surfaces were tweaked, curved, and reshaped until the sound matched the spectacle. A cello played in one corner blooms across the entire space with warmth and clarity, every note dancing across sculpted wood and whispering walls. But it's not just about making things louder. Sometimes you want to control sound, dampen it, redirect it, absorb it entirely. Recording studios use foam panels, bass traps, and diffusers to create dry rooms where the sound has nowhere to run. No echoes, no reverb, just pure raw tone. The result, total control. Every clap, strum, or sigh stays exactly where it's supposed to. And then there's the opposite extreme. Reverberate spaces like chapels, opera houses, or, if we're being honest, your shower. Hard surfaces reflect sound. Tall ceilings give it room to unfold. That's why singing in a tiled bathroom makes you sound like Adele on a good day, or at least like your most optimistic self. But poor acoustics, oh, they'll expose a space's flaws immediately. Ever tried having a conversation in a busy restaurant where every clink and murmur turns into a roar? That's acoustic clutter, a buildup of overlapping sound reflections that create chaos. Architects now use acoustic modeling software to simulate how a space will sound before it's even built, designing ceilings, walls, and furniture placements that prevent sonic pileups. Some places, however, lean into their echo. The Hamilton Mausoleum in Scotland held the record for the longest echo in a man-made structure, 15 seconds. Clap your hands, and the sound would ping around the space like a ghost refusing to leave. The building was never intended as a concert venue, but musicians and sound engineers flocked there anyway, fascinated by the challenge of playing against their own delayed notes. Quirky detail. In 2014, a group of researchers took this idea even further. Deep inside an abandoned oil storage tank in Scotland known as the Inchindown Tunnel, they fired a blank gunshot and recorded a reverberation that lasted 75 seconds. That's the longest reverb ever captured. The place was never designed for sound, and yet, it became a time capsule of echo, a space where sound refused to die. But even in ordinary buildings, acoustics matter. Schools with poor acoustics affect how children learn. Hospitals where intercoms echo can raise stress levels. Open-plan offices, while trendy, often lack acoustic privacy, making it impossible to have a confidential conversation or concentrate through the steady drone of Greg in sales making yet another loud call. To combat this, designers now incorporate acoustic treatments, from sound-absorbing panels disguised as artwork to clever ceiling baffles that catch and diffuse excess energy. Materials matter too. Wood warms sound, glass bounces it, carpet swallows it whole. Every chair, every table, every plant changes how the space speaks. Even cities have sonic fingerprints. The narrow streets of old European towns create urban canyons where footsteps echo dramatically. Subways have a signature roar and rumble, while underpasses often carry strange resonances that make your voice sound twice as deep or twice as haunted. And let's not forget the accidental acoustics, the places that surprise you, the hallway that turns your whisper into a broadcast, the stairwell that sings back when you hum, the bridge that buzzes faintly when the wind hits just right. These are unintentional concerts, performances for no audience, just you and the architecture collaborating in a fleeting sonic duet. Tonight, as you lie in your room, think about how it sounds. Not just what you hear, but how you hear it. The softness of the mattress beneath you dulling your movement. The curtains absorbing street noise. The door frame subtly resonating with your fan's low hum. You are inside a living, breathing instrument, whether it's a dorm, a penthouse, or a blanket fort in the living room. And that instrument is shaping your every word, every sigh, every sleepy breath. A small sound prickles at the back of your scalp. Maybe it's a soft whisper in a commercial, or a light tapping in a video you didn't mean to keep watching. But something about it holds you there. A barely audible crackle, a whispery voice brushing the inside of your ear canal like it's been hired to repaint your neurons. You feel the chill ripple across your shoulders, down your spine, and into the pads of your fingers. This is no ordinary sound. This is ASMR, the sonic equivalent of being tucked in by invisible hands. ASMR, or Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, is a term that entered popular culture sometime in the early 2010s, but the sensation it describes, that's much older. It's the tingling feeling some people get in response to soft, repetitive, or unusually intimate sounds, whispers, taps, slow page turns, even the gentle rustle of fabric. Not everyone experiences it, and for those who do, it's nearly impossible to describe. Like sound that touches you without touching you. Like being scratched on the inside by silk. The triggers vary widely. Some people are activated by whispering voices, others by brushing noises or the methodical clipping of nails. There are even entire YouTube subgenres dedicated to ASMR roleplay, librarians organizing books, dentists adjusting equipment, soft-spoken receptionists checking you in for a fictional appointment. It's weird, it's oddly addictive, and it's a global phenomenon. Historians still argue whether the ASMR experience has a documented past. Some point to free saw, the chills you get during emotional music, as a possible cousin. Others reference 19th century descriptions of thrills from being read to aloud, or head orgasms described in certain poetry salons. But the clinical term ASMR is barely a decade old, and it still lacks a universally accepted scientific explanation. That hasn't stopped millions from chasing it nightly with headphones and a willing suspension of disbelief. So what's going on here? One theory suggests ASMR activates a blend of sensory and emotional processing systems, similar to how we react during grooming behaviors in primates. That is, your brain interprets the close, soft, slow movements as signals of safety, trust, and care, like a friend combing your hair or your mother softly reading you to sleep. The result is a calming cascade of neural responses: lowered heart rate, increased endorphins, maybe a gentle rush of oxytocin, and then the tingles. Brain imaging studies show ASMR can activate areas associated with emotional arousal and reward, like the nucleus accumbens and prefrontal cortex. But the effect isn't identical to pleasure or fear. It lives somewhere in between, a liminal zone of sensory satisfaction that doesn't need to make sense to feel good. And the auditory triggers, they tend to be high in detail but low in volume. Close-mic'd, slow-paced, and often binaural, meaning recorded with two microphones to mimic the directionality of natural hearing. When you listen with headphones, it feels like the sound is in your head, moving from ear to ear as if someone is circling you with feathered fingers. That's not an accident. That's sonic intimacy, engineered by people tapping on hairbrushes for science, or something like it. Quirky fact: Bob Ross, the beloved painter with the soft voice and the endless supply of happy little trees, is often credited as the accidental godfather of ASMR. Though his show aired long before the term was coined, countless viewers cite his gentle tone, brush strokes, and rhythmic tapping as their first ASMR experience. He didn't know it, but he was triggering millions of tingles, one landscape at a time. Not everyone gets ASMR, though. For some, the same sounds cause irritation instead. There's even a term for that: misophonia, or hatred of sound. People with misophonia may experience intense emotional reactions, anger, disgust, anxiety, to specific noises like chewing, pen clicking, or throat clearing. It's the evil twin of ASMR. Same sonic terrain, very different paths through it. And while ASMR videos are often treated as relaxation aids, some explore the format with more experimental intent. There are ASMR cooking shows, unboxing rituals, video game commentaries, all delivered in tones that could melt steel beams if steel beams were just very stressed out viewers looking to sleep. The internet, never one to miss a trend, has also produced ASMR horror. Yes, softly whispered ghost stories, creaking doors, and slow footsteps designed to trigger tingles and chills. Because why not make the cozy terrifying? ASMR's commercial reach has expanded too. Some companies now build sonic branding around ASMR principles, crinkly packaging, whispery voiceovers, soft contact sounds, to appeal to that subtle brain-tingling itch. A shampoo ad might linger on the sound of suds squishing between fingers. A luxury chocolate spot might highlight the snap of a square being broken, the whisper of foil being unfolded. It's not just marketing, it's an auditory massage. But why does ASMR help people sleep? Likely because the sensory focus it demands, listening closely, quietly, patiently, pulls you into a calm, parasympathetic state. Your breathing slows, muscle tension eases. The world narrows to a few pleasant sounds in the dark. In that space, you're not just hearing, you're floating. And whether you tingle or not, the slow pace and gentle tones can coax your mind out of its anxious loops. Of course, not all of it is helpful. Overconsumption of ASMR, like any media, can dull the effect. Some listeners report tolerance, needing more frequent or intense stimuli to get the same response. Others simply find the novelty wears off. The magic fades. But for millions, it remains a reliable lullaby, sound as comfort, carefully calibrated. Tonight, as your body sinks into stillness, maybe you'll catch the faint sound of fabric brushing against your sheet, or the slow scratch of your own hair against the pillow. And maybe, if you're lucky, your brain will light up with that peculiar warmth, that scalp-deep sparkle that feels like someone hit the mute button on your anxiety. Because ASMR isn't about volume, it's about closeness. It's not about music, it's about texture. And when the world gets loud, sometimes all you need is a whisper, perfectly timed, perfectly soft, to remind you that you're safe. That someone, somewhere, is folding towels very gently just for you. The night feels endless now, soft and silent, as if the world itself has paused for breath. You lie still, eyelids heavy, when a thought floats in, one you've probably heard 100 times in every sci-fi movie ever made. In space, no one can hear you scream. It's a tagline, a warning, and a scientific truth, mostly. But here, in the soft final stretch of your waking hours, let's peel back the vacuum curtain and ask, is space really silent? Or are we just not listening the right way? The short answer: yes, space, by definition, is mostly a vacuum, and sound as you know it, pressure waves moving through a medium, can't travel in a vacuum. No air, no water, no molecules to bump together. In space, you can clap your hands, fire a cannon, or play a tuba, and none of it would make a sound anyone could hear, unless they were literally touching you. It's not that the event is quiet, it's that there's nothing to carry the sound beyond your own body. But the longer answer: oh, it's way more complicated. Because while traditional sound waves need a medium, the universe is never truly empty. It has particles, dust, plasma, energetic fields. And in certain contexts, those particles can vibrate. Those vibrations can be measured, interpreted, converted. In a sense, the cosmos is humming. We've just had to invent new ears to hear it. Take plasma oscillations, for example. In the solar wind and magnetic fields, charged particles can move in waves. These aren't sound waves in the air, but they're real. NASA and other space agencies have developed instruments to record these wave patterns and translate them into audio frequencies you can hear. The result: eerie, beautiful, otherworldly. The song of Saturn, the chorus of auroras, the pop and hiss of Jupiter's magnetosphere like a haunted shortwave radio. Historians still argue whether early astronomers sensed anything like this. Not literally, of course, but poetically. The Pythagoreans believed in the music of the spheres, a cosmic harmony produced by the movements of the planets. They imagined the universe as one vast instrument, each celestial body a vibrating string. They weren't wrong, exactly. They were just off by a few centuries and a whole lot of physics. Quirky fact: astronauts aboard the Apollo missions reported hearing strange, whistling sounds in their radios while passing around the far side of the moon. At first, it was thought to be some kind of interference, but later analysis showed that what they were hearing was radio waves interacting with the plasma environment around the spacecraft. Not space talking, but space responding. Even today, astronauts aboard the International Space Station hear constant sound, not from space itself, but from the machines keeping them alive. Fans, pumps, oxygen scrubbers. A low, persistent symphony of whirring and humming. In fact, the ISS is surprisingly loud. NASA monitors acoustic levels to prevent hearing damage. floating in silence, a fantasy, floating in a climate-controlled tech closet, much closer to the truth. But what about space movies? All those rumbles and explosions and engine roars in a vacuum, total nonsense. If a spaceship explodes in deep space, the only sound you'd hear from inside another ship would be whatever vibrated through your hull if you were close enough. And yes, sound designers know this. But silence, it turns out, is boring in a blockbuster. Audiences want to feel the boom, even if it's a lie. Yet silence isn't the only option. Scientists can and do turn cosmic data into sound in a process called sonification. Instead of visual graphs, they translate information into pitch, rhythm, and tone. Black holes merging, that's a crescendo of gravitational waves, solar flares, sharp, rising chirps, cosmic background radiation, a faint hiss, the leftover heat of the Big Bang stretched into eternity. In 2015, when LIGO detected gravitational waves from colliding black holes, the data was translated into an audible chirp. That moment, barely a blip, was the sound of two titanic voids smashing into each other over 1 billion years ago. You could argue it's not sound in the traditional sense, but your ears don't care. They just want the story. And what a story space tells once you start listening. Comets make magnetic field melodies. Venus hums with electric turbulence. Even our own Earth, wrapped in its protective magnetic bubble, crackles and hisses with energy, captured by satellites and transformed into alien lullabies that somehow still feel familiar, like thunder in another language. But let's return to the vacuum. That quiet you imagine when you think of space. That absence, it's not peaceful, it's lonely. True silence, true void lacks feedback. No echo. No sound bouncing off walls or water. If you screamed, it would die in your throat, unheard, unreflected, unshared. That's not cinematic, that's existential. And yet it's not entirely quiet out there. Space hums. Not audibly, not directly, but fundamentally. Particles move, stars pulse, planets ring. Our own sun generates waves so enormous they ripple across its surface like ocean swells. We can't hear them with ears, but we can translate them, and when we do, we hear something astonishing. The sun groaning and rolling like a cosmic drum. Even Mars has a voice. NASA's Perseverance rover, equipped with microphones, has recorded the Martian wind, soft, gritty, and oddly melancholy. It's the first time we've truly heard another planet's atmosphere, not through metaphor or math, but raw vibration. The sound of alien air brushing against alien dust. So tonight, as you lie wrapped in quiet, remember, space isn't silent. Not completely, not forever. It sings in plasma, pulses in magnetism, whispers in data. And just because your ears weren't designed to hear it doesn't mean it's not there. In the end, the universe has always been speaking. We just had to learn how to listen. And now here you are, stretched out in the soft dark, your breath a quiet rhythm, your thoughts beginning to untangle and float. You've listened to the science of sound across centuries, continents, and galaxies, and still, something hums just beneath the surface. A question. A shimmer of curiosity. Where does it all go from here? What is the future of sound? Not just what we hear, but how we hear it, how we shape it, how we feel it. Let's start small, or rather close. Audio technology is creeping ever closer to the body. Wireless earbuds that sit snug in your ears. Bone conduction headphones that vibrate your skull instead of blocking your ears. And smart glasses that project sound directly into your inner ear, using ultrasound so directional it feels like a private conversation with reality itself. These aren't futuristic concepts, they're already for sale. Sound is becoming personal, more like a layer of clothing than a broadcasted signal. And the direction it's heading, even deeper. Some companies are experimenting with neural audio interfaces, devices that bypass the ears entirely and transmit sound directly into the auditory cortex. Sound that never travels through air. It's like whispering directly into the brain's back door. One day, hearing a podcast might involve no speakers, no headphones, just a tiny implant and a signal. You wouldn't just hear the music, you'd be the instrument. Meanwhile, in the external world, sound is learning to take shape. Scientists are now able to use acoustic levitation, manipulating high-frequency sound waves to lift and move tiny objects without touching them. Picture a bead of water hovering midair, suspended on invisible waves. The next step, using that tech for surgery, drug delivery, or even haptic feedback systems where sound waves make you feel textures in the air. Sound becomes touch. Your fingertips could one day brush against a hologram and feel its weight. Historians still argue whether ancient temples used sonic geometry to influence mood, if particular architectural frequencies could induce trance or focus. But today, architects and audio engineers are taking those ideas seriously. Future classrooms, hospitals, even airports may be built to tune the human nervous system. Spaces designed not just for visual appeal, but for emotional harmony through tailored acoustics. Not silence, not noise, resonance. And let's not forget augmented reality, where sound is layered over real-world environments. Imagine walking through a park while hearing a virtual piano score tailored to your pace and posture, or standing in front of a monument while a voice, not from your phone, but seemingly from the air around you, begins to tell you a story. That's spatial audio, and it's evolving fast. The music industry is already leaning into this. Immersive sound systems like Dolby Atmos and Sony 360 Reality Audio let producers place audio objects in three-dimensional space. Instead of just left and right, you hear up, down, behind, and beyond. Songs become rooms you walk through, not just background music, but architecture. And for those who can't hear at all, the future is inclusive. Sound visualization technology is bringing rhythm and melody into the visual world with vibrating wearables and color-mapped waveforms. Deaf composers are creating scores based on shape and motion. Sound becomes a visual art, motion in light instead of vibration in air. There's even research into synthetic hearing, AI-driven algorithms that turn ambient vibration into interpreted sound for people with profound deafness. Imagine wearing a patch that turns subway rumbles, car horns, or voice patterns into a kind of ambient awareness. Not hearing as we know it, but a sixth sense built from sound's ghost. Quirky detail. Some artists are training AI composers using data sets of birdsong, whale calls, and machine hums to create music that never existed before. Soundscapes that blend the biological and artificial into something entirely new. A symphony composed of refrigerator compressors, cicadas, and algorithms. Strange, yes, but weirdly beautiful. In urban design, the future of sound may also involve smart soundscapes, systems that adapt the acoustic environment in real time, parks that get quieter when crowds increase, sidewalks that generate musical tones when walked upon, but only when traffic is low, cities that change their pitch depending on weather, population density, or time of day, dynamic acoustics tuned like a city-wide orchestra. Even language may evolve, shaped by technology. Voice assistants are normalizing speech patterns, influencing how children speak and expect to be understood. Meanwhile, text-to-speech systems are becoming so advanced they can replicate inflection, emotion, even regional accent. Soon, an AI voice might comfort, narrate, argue, or whisper with such nuance that it becomes indistinguishable from a human. We may have to redefine what it means to hear someone. And then there's space, that vast and mostly silent stage. We've already sent music into the void, but future missions may include real-time sonification of cosmic data. listening to stars in real time, turning Martian seismic activity into ambient symphonies, or using vibration-based communication in places where radio waves don't cooperate. Imagine sitting in your kitchen, making tea, while a tiny speaker on your counter whispers what Saturn is sounding like today. A literal cosmic playlist. As sound technology evolves, so does its emotional resonance. Sound therapy, already used for anxiety, PTSD, and sleep disorders, is expanding with personalized tones, frequencies tuned to individual brain waves, creating states of relaxation or focus with uncanny precision. One person's perfect nap tone may be another's study track. And it's not science fiction, it's already being tested in clinics. Tonight, as your eyes flutter closed, your body already halfway to sleep, remember that sound is still growing, still changing, still finding new ways to reach you. It began with a vibration, then a voice, then a song, then silence. Now, it's becoming something else entirely, something smarter, softer, stranger. The future of sound isn't just louder or clearer, it's closer. Sound will live in your skin, your space, your thoughts. It will bend to your mood, follow your breath, and maybe, just maybe, sing you to sleep not with lullabies, but with your own gentle rhythms played back like a familiar echo. Not the sound of the world, the sound of you. And now, here we are at the quiet edge of the journey. The sounds have softened, the vibrations faded, and the room around you has dissolved into that beautiful, in-between hush, the kind that lives just before sleep, where thoughts stretch long and slow like shadows at dusk. You've followed sound across worlds and centuries, through the corridors of your own body and into the cold silence of space. You've listened to echoes in ancient stone, to whales singing beneath the sea, to the fluttering voice in your throat and the tingles crawling across your scalp. And through it all, one truth has remained. Sound is never still. It is motion. It is memory. It is life, vibrating softly beneath everything you know. As your breath deepens now, slow and steady, let that last idea settle in your chest, that you are made not just of cells and stardust, but of rhythm. Your heartbeat, your inhale and exhale, the whisper of fabric as you shift just slightly, half asleep. These are the lullabies that belong to you alone. No need to hold on to anything else. Not the facts, not the questions, not even the stories. Let them drift to the background like distant hums. Just texture now, just comfort. Let the air feel heavier. Let your body feel lighter. Let your ears grow lazy. Because it's all still here, even in the quiet. The echoes haven't stopped. They've simply faded into something more gentle, more kind, just beneath hearing, just beneath dreaming. And if there's a sound waiting for you in sleep, maybe it's a wave or a whisper or a memory reshaped. It will find you soon. It always does.